Yeah, I come from men that stand. I'm in the field and you just sit in the stands. Take that bass out your voice. If you ain't got no gun in your hand, I do what I want. And you don't even do what you can, you do what you told. I got no love for my foes that can mimic my delivery and copy my prose. But what they can't comprehend is how I stick to this code. It's either in you or not. It's not the kicks and the clothes. They ain't cut from the same cloth, can't come from the same loom, fit in similar shapes or even sit in the same room. Confusing authenticity with part of the costume. I'm teaching gifted children, you can't come in this classroom.
Dare to struggle, dare to win.
Welcome back. Episode 21, Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win. We got our brother who came from the motherland. He's back. Yusef, Bunchy, Shakur, Geechee, and Cherie Danielle. How y'all doing?
Sorry, I had to hit my thing. I was pulling up the chat and then, but we good. Happy to be alive.
Man, I'm fat for a nerd, man. I almost forgot how you guys look, man.
Damn, man.
You forgot this face,
I forgot. I mean, your hair all over the place, like you stuck your finger in the socket and just.
Yeah, I've been like a wild woman. I'm on my art and dye type vibe. So
I'm about to say that's you deep in that mode. That I know I got to go into deep space mentally and things, right?
Yeah, my personal appearance is definitely taking some hits, but all for the love of the art.
Well, listen, we want to welcome y'all to Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win. Where you're gonna get some black radical politics according to CMB's vantage point. You got people here in Atlanta, Detroit, and hey, listen, we here on Black Liberation Media, where all the other dope shows are at. So make sure you tune in and check out all the shows. And we know that the audience is normally politicized, so what we would like for y'all to do is copy that link and share it to the nearest person. But I think even this episode, you might want to share it to some other politicized people, because when Dr. CBS come through, I think it's going to be an interesting conversation, though. But before we get there, like tell me how y'all feeling, what y'all into, and then Yusef, man, you got to tell us about your travels, man. Where you been at? What you been doing and shit?
Yeah, I've been good. As we were just saying, yeah, just been in rehearsal mode. Show goes up in 1 week. So, yeah, just been trying to get everything learned. I'm in New York right now. I'm at my bestie's crib. My mom comes into New York next week. We'll be staying in Harlem. So, yeah, it's gonna be a jam-packed next couple of weeks. But I'm excited getting everything tweaked.
That's what's up. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, for sure. It is, especially during times like this.
Yeah. What about you? You've been traveling. Where all you been? And you got some conferences under your belt. I know you was meeting some folks. Matter of fact, let me see. No, go ahead. You get started. I'm gonna find a picture. I found a picture, man.
You find a picture. I don't know what that might look like.
You gotta post one of him being sharp, dapper Dan out here.
I found a picture of that man trying to sign up for other podcasts and shit, man. That's what I got a picture of. Let me find that motherfucker. But go ahead, man. Tell us about your travel.
I was in Dakar, Senegal for the Malcolm X conference in the shadow of Malcolm X, Islam and the Black radical tradition. I believe this group, they organize something every year, but I think this is the first year they did something in Senegal, in Dakar in particular. And they have some of the Muslim brothers and sisters have deep roots there. I can't pronounce the name. It's Minima Bay. I'm fucking it up. It's like 4 hours outside of Dakar. It's a predominantly Muslim city that also has a school. So actually, a lot of Black Muslims here in the States send their kids there, and so a lot of folks go there and to recuperate, and actually have lived there. So it was a dope experience overall. I mean, I was probably one of the non-Muslim folks in the building, especially when we went to Minima Bay, and we on the bus and shit. And I'm like, oh, I think I'm the only non-Muslim on this. And my homeboy was like, man, you Muslimish around this month. So we gonna coin that one. it had me rethinking Pan-Africanism my whole time there. Not Pan-Africanism itself as an ideology, I believe it, but in terms of like the everyday African, they ain't thinking about Pan-Africanism. Saying like the everyday Black person in America, they ain't thinking about Black liberation. And not to say we can't think about it, but it just made me like think, how do we apply it though? I mean, like the consumerism over there is so strong of tourism. Like it you can cut it with a knife, where people is very gentle, very kind, very welcoming, very thoughtful, similar to that Southern hospitality. Like, come on in, boy, take your shoes off and get you a plate, and it was that. But then on the same token, you can feel where a person could possibly make more money off of you in one day than probably what they make in a week or making a whole month. And so that economy, it was there. But then on the flip side, you trying to buy as much as you can for $100, and it's you wrestling with that on both sides. But overall, it was a beautiful experience. It wasn't my first time. I've been to Ghana, and so I was one day I spent the whole day in the market, which is very intense. People trying to sell you stuff, and I'm like, man, let me get the hell up out of here. Let me get to my hotel. And I thought I lost my wallet, but I left it in the car of my driver. And I called him, and he had brought it back to me and shit. And I was all geeked and all excited, because a lot of them like, you my friend, you my brother. And I felt like he was my friend, he was my brother, because he was like, even though he couldn't have done nothing with it, but in the States, motherfucker would have tried to do something with that wallet. But it was, like I said, it was dope. I mean, Deruba was there. I mean, I had a chance to interview him that I'll be putting up real soon. It was another sister, original member of the LA Panthers. And I'll conclude on this. They had an all Black woman panel of Muslim sisters, and most of them was from the States. And in their presentation, they openly talked about patriarchy and the nature of patriarchy within Islam, and how heavy it is, right? And they deconstructing it, and how even them presenting in this manner is like anti-Islam, so to speak, right? Or the anti-Christ. And it's funny, at the end, the question, it was, so Senegal is a French speaking country, so people was able to translate. So his African brother, who's a Muslim, asked a question in French, and he pretty much criticized, like, how dare y'all come and talk and be in this manner, and blah, 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 pretty much what they addressed. And he said it, and there was this one sister from Detroit, she almost took her shoe off and threw it at him. But it was
my type of feminism.
Yeah, but it was dope to hear that, challenge that publicly, and then people in the space was also open to it. I mean, I don't know if you guys ever heard of something called the Islamic Party. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-mm.
So it was a brother there that was the founder of it. It started here in the States. It was kind of similar to the party, the Panthers, in the sense of, but from an Islamic standpoint. So it was dope to hear that. And then also, it was a sister on the panel. Her father knew Malcolm, left New York and went to North Carolina to start the nation there and transition. So, I mean, I guess I conclude, because I also left struggling, because I heard it quite often. What does the Black radical tradition mean to you guys?
So, if that's the question, I think it's always been contended, and I think our guest coming up, Dr. CBS, would probably answer this even better. But I think it's highlighting of African people in the U.S. particular who had always a radical response to U.S. imperialism, slavery, whiteness, right? And the goal was always to uproot it and totally remove white hegemony from their material conditions. So, and I think there were always a strain of that there. And oftentimes what we do is, because the media shapes how we look at radical people and give us symbols to mimic or celebrate, it's a call and declaration to focus on the traditions of those radical people as opposed to the people who are not so radical. But that's what I would say. How about you, Cherie?
Yeah, I definitely think it's that. I guess to me, I guess to yeah, I would say it would be the history of Africans going against the status quo. So I think I think being a political prisoner, a prisoner of war is a part of that. Doing the radical work. I think sometimes we get confused on what that actually is because somebody can think it's radical to be starting your own business or whatever. But I think with the actual black radical tradition, I think it does align, just go on the lines of going against the things that you've been forced to believe. I just think it kind of gets tricky because sometimes people get confused on what is a radical approach to something or not, and then it gets confused into being thinking outside the box between and not thinking at all, where you get people that think they're radical but they're just like more like anti-intellectual. So I think, or like, weird conspiracy theories and stuff like that. And they'll think, oh, I'm being radical because I think the Illuminati's gonna get, but it's like, so I think, yeah, but I think overall it's standing against the American white hegemonic status quo for sure.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what else is radical. So we had a couple of our tentacles out in the world, right? And Yusef was trying to, leave our motherfucking podcast, bro. And he was shopping himself out there in Africa. And nobody would listen to him. And then somebody took a picture of this motherfucker talking to the last being that he could to try to petition to be on their show. And that motherfucker said no. So the real reason why Yusef is back is because even the camel turned his ass down for a co-host spot. So he ain't got no other choice but to be with us because the camel said, hell no, nah, bro. You're not fucking with
Hell no.
So my man back because the camel ain't give him a chance. That's why he really back.
That was a good one, man. That was a good one.
Table topics. That's how you get it, man.
I'm honored to be back, man. I'm glad you guys welcomed me back.
So, but listen, coming up in a couple minutes, we have the professor. And I think she's gonna grade your answer. So what would you say? Like that was mine. I think mine is probably not that good. But what would you say the black radical tradition is? Yusef?
To be honest with you, I'm still struggling with it. I thought your both you guys' answer was good in the sense of you think. I think what I struggle with is the tradition, and what tradition are we talking about? I think black radicals always stood on its own, and then now you have black radical tradition. So tradition of Nat Turner, tradition of David Walker, tradition. So thinking about it from that standpoint, Ella Baker helps me crystallize it. But it's such a popular term now, in particular. Activist or intellectual activist spaces, and I don't have an issue with it, but just trying to digest it where it just doesn't become a term. So because like what's different than black radical tradition than being a revolutionary? It's a bit different than black radical tradition than being a black socialist, right? So is that a different thing, or are they connected?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know those. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I would say those fall under black radical tradition to me. I think that's the way I look at it. I think black radical tradition is kind of like, I think it's the same way where people will say, leftist, but they're referring to people that may be either anarchist, communist, socialist, and it's all supposed to be under that umbrella. But I think black radical tradition, yeah, it would be a collective to me of like revolutionaries, people that would identify as black leftists, people that would identify as black socialists. To me, I mean, but yeah, that's how I kind of see it. Is that all falls under that umbrella?
Well, look, tell me this, people in the chat, make sure y'all just go ahead and take a little break. Go get you a pen and a paper, and be ready to write some shit down. But also, when we bring Dr. CBS up, maybe she'll give us a kind of a particular. But stay tuned. We'll be right back with our
I'm throwing copper at the coppers, but I'm shaking like Morocco. Say my prayers with the pistol, serve the sinners with the chopper. All my buddies got it from scratch. My house had Betty Crocker. His mama owned D. He ain't even get no shot up. Profit is invisible. Profit come from product. He thinking buffet. He can't comprehend no potluck. God bless the child with his own powder to rock.
Welcome back. Welcome back. We have Dr. CBS here. How you doing?
Hey y'all, I'm doing all right. My baby's sick, so if you hear any coughing in the background, I got my headphones on. But if you hear
Oh,
some
get well,
coughing,
Sankara.
yeah, I know, and she's teething, so it's just like it's all bad. But yeah, we're doing all right. How y'all doing?
We're making it. Shout out to the family. So you heard us a little bit talking about the Black radical tradition. How would you define that, or how, and even how would you even help us pull out our thought that we kind of start?
Before you answer that question, I got what up, my homegirl from Detroit.
It was Geechee, and welcome back.
Thank
you. What up, Mo?
I do that one. What up?
We're following your travels on social media.
Thank you.
Yeah, and congrats on your new job. I feel like I haven't talked to you since you kind of took over the helm of your nonprofit. What's it called again?
Michigan Roundtable for Just Communities.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you. So what's your 2 cents on that Black radical tradition? How would you define that?
Well, I would say so thinking about Cedric Robinson, right? I would just say that the Black radical tradition, based on how Cedric Robinson lays it out in Black Marxism, is essentially the multifaceted ways that people of African descent resist basically capitalism, imperialism, and white imposition. I don't think they have to identify as however we would codify the left, because part of what Robinson conveys is a sort of metaphysical and non-material ways that African people resist. And I would say for Robinson, it's quite ecumenical the way, so it's not just people who identify as some version of like Marxist Leninists. It is, and in fact, I think that he would situate the Black radical tradition outside of that because of his critique of Marxism and his critique of the sort of Western, the racial logics that are already embedded in Marxism. I don't share that particular perspective. That's in my work. I talk about the tradition of radical Blackness as opposed to the Black radical tradition, because I am talking about Black revolutionaries who identify as anti-capitalist broadly conceived. And I'm talking about people whose work is sort of it's people who are doing like material struggles against like capitalism and imperialism. So I would say for Robinson, though, it's much broader than that, right? And so which is why he marks it back to like slave revolts and marronage and that type of thing, because, for example, as we know about Maroons are radical in the sense that they are resisting their own captivity, but not all Maroons were against other people's captivity, because there were many Maroons communities who did return runaway enslaved Africans, for example, or made particular treaties with the British. So it's not always radicalism in the way that we see it. And I think that's part of what Robinson's point is that any ways that Africans are resisting, but also making meaning of and trying to sort of build a world that emanates from African humanity, that would be like the Black radical tradition.
Thank you. So we wanted to have you here to talk about your latest article, but I think a lot of organizations and people have been watching the evolution of you write about mutual comradeship. Mm-hmm. And if you can tell us kind of maybe what was the thing that made you write it, and then what did you feel like you accomplished with the phrase and even this article?
A long time ago, I heard one of my comrades, Alex, talking about comradeship between CLR James and somebody else. And after I was hearing and I think in the very first thing I ever wrote about mutual comradeship which was maybe in 2017, I have a footnote It was at the Caribbean Philosophical Association. So anyway, so out of that, so hearing like his use of the term comradeship, and then Jody Dean had an article called Four Theses on the Comrade, and later came out with a book called Comrade, where she's giving her a sort of typology of what a comrade is. But in her typology, among other things, like a scriptive category doesn't really matter. A scriptive category being like race, class. It's like anybody can be a comrade, but not everybody can be a comrade. But for me, when mutual comradeship is a particular way that Black radical people related to one another, their organizations and the work. I look at the period of McCarthyism, but part of what I was thinking about, or part of what I think about with mutual comradeship, is like often in our organizations, we don't necessarily think about how we relate to one another as a part of our praxis, right? But it's really important. To me, a lot of organizations are collapsing all around us because we don't have our ethics quite clear, nor do we, and we kind of assume goodwill amongst one another, which we should to a certain degree, but the assumption of goodwill doesn't mean that we shouldn't codify things like how we relate to one another, how we are going to construct the way we see the world, but then also the politics in which we engage. And so that's what mutual comradeship is about. And basically, I had observed basically through my study, so the study I was doing for Black Scare, Red Scare, and other projects, that there seemed like no matter what, there was this like kind of group of Black radical folks who were under constant state violence, but they just kept going. Like some of them had to go underground. Many of their organizations were shut down by the state, but they kept forming new organizations. They moved together in a particular way. They definitely argued. They had all kinds of disagreements, but it never undermined the way that they worked together, nor their commitment to being an organization that with the aim of sort of proletarian revolution with oppressed people at the center. So that's sort of where the idea of mutual comradeship came from. And the first piece I wrote about it was about W.B. Du Bois and his mutual comradeship with radical Black women. And that's in some Du Bois volume that came out like 100 years later, but it's out now. But so that, yeah. And then I was like, oh, well, then I was going to write 2 books about mutual comradeship, but now I'm trying to merge them back into one. So that's what it's about.
I can't wait for that to come out. Go ahead, Cherie.
Hey, how you doing? I know we met in Atlanta a little while back when I got your book, The Black Scare, Red Scare. And I watched your recent class that you taught at the People's Forum. And I just remember this one guy had like this long story where he shared about like his struggle with anti-Black Palestinians and how he just started to feel awkward at some point and didn't want to wear anything that rep Palestine, or just kind of got weird with that camaraderie. And I see so much of that online, but I know you were really quick to tell him, like, it doesn't matter how racist, I'm paraphrasing, but it doesn't matter how racist
I
or
said,
whatever.
I don't care if every Palestinian I ever met called me a nigga. I would still believe in Palestinian liberation because that's my ethics.
Yeah, so I wanted you to just dive deeper into that, because for some reason people will hear that and be like, that is the craziest thing ever. But to me it makes so much sense, because it's like you have to still stand against the enemy, like regardless of all these things that we've all been indoctrinated with. There's a lot of Black people that are anti-Black, so but we still stand against the oppressor. So I feel like it has to be the same on all ends. So I guess if you could just elaborate more on that, I think that would be great.
Yeah. So, we talk a lot about like primary, secondary, tertiary contradictions. And so for me, the primary contradiction is imperialism, specifically US imperialism in this particular epoch that we're in. And so if I'm an anti-imperialist, then I am against every sort of manifestation of that. So I am against US empire, and I'm also against the practices of extraordinary violence, oppression, repression, and exploitation that are are part and parcel of U.S. imperialism. And so my own individual experience is less important than my broader commitment, my politic, right? And it's not easy, right? It's not easy. And I must say, no Palestinian has ever called me a nigga. I will say that. And it's like, and if that did happen, there might be some conflicts there, but that doesn't mean that I'm like, well, then fuck you. Then all your people deserve to be burned alive and have their land confiscated and all this stuff. Cause that's not only callous, it also would make me an enemy, right? It will make me an enemy of the people. And so I think because of our alienation and individualism and our incapacity to struggle and to absorb like hardship, we use those interpersonal dynamics as excuses to abdicate our responsibility. And so, and that's just not my politic. I love Black people. And so I have sympathy for that position, right? I have sympathy for even like a lot of the discourse about how like Black people always show up for everybody else, which we don't, and nobody shows up for us, which they do. But I understand that sentiment, right? Because when we take into account that a lot of people have not left more than 3 blocks away from their home, right? A lot of people, majority of people in this country read at a 6th grade level or below, right? Most of us are distracted and entertained and not educated. And so why else? So what I expect that type of analysis, because that's what we're bombarded with, right? One, that Black people stand alone. We have no allies. Why do we care about what's happening over there, et cetera, et cetera. Plus the sort of immediacy of hardship. But nonetheless, me as an academic, as an intellectual, as a striving revolutionary, as somebody in movement, I have no excuse to have those backward ideas. And it's my job to root them out whenever I encounter them to the best of my ability.
So I like to go back a little bit. You dropped something around your dialect of comradeship, and you connected to ethnics, and you intersected around organizations and how the lack of ethics contribute to the downfalls of organizations. And when you look at the history of our movement of revolutionary organizations, use the Black Panther Party, for example, that they had a 10-point, not the platform, but the code of ethics that they had, right? And it was like some wishy-washy shit that they put together. Some folks applied to it, some other folks didn't. But the way you broke it down, and I don't want us to miss it or our audience to miss it, because many of us, and I think it ties into your other parts of, the contradiction you may have with a group of people, or even with our own selves. It shouldn't stop us from struggling. It should not stop us from holding a principled position. And I think the fundamental thing you're talking about is transformation, right? And how do we transform ourselves to be able to stay in the struggle, to engage in struggle? So can you elaborate on that more? Because people join organizations for different reasons, and because of the lack of strong ethics, our organizations are being undermined from the inside out.
Yeah, and that's one reason I really enjoy reading Ori's book, Tip of the Spear, which has been talked about frequently on BLM platform. But because part of what he talks about when he's talking about the Attica Rebellion and the different rebellions that led up to that is like this idea of becoming new men. And yes, this is gendered, but there's also a non-gendered component to that. Like, so I think that because of our current analysis of patriarchy, we can extrapolate into the past and make it seem like anytime the term man was used, it only meant man, but oftentimes it just meant human. But anyway, I think that this idea of becoming new man that's an ethical commitment. So it means that it's not that we're not only fighting for something out there and for material transformation, but also we have to be new people in order to build a new world. We have to, the jealousies and insecurities and egocentrism and traumas that we have now, we have a responsibility to work those out. Like, it's not some petty bourgeois shit. It's not like everybody needs to go to therapy, which most people probably do, but it's also like we have a commitment to like work our shit out, because otherwise we're just going to reproduce the same hierarchies, contradictions, and antagonisms that we're trying to overcome here. And I think that, and really the easiest thing to change day to day is yourself, you know? And so when I talk about ethics, it's sort of like, oftentimes we can have and actually truly believe these are sort of like lofty goals, right? Like free Palestine. It when I say lofty, I don't mean impractical. It's just a big thing. But then we've never spoken to a Palestinian, right? So when I'm talking about ethics, what I'm talking about is the way that we consciously choose to relate to people and choose to relate to ourselves and the world around us in order to embody the types of values and just ways of being in the world that that ensure that the people that we interact with or that we interact with people in a dignified way. And that's not nothing. And I think we treat it as nothing or as something that's like woo-woo or as abstract or whatever or liberal. But that's why, you know, look around. Look around at our movement spaces, right? And how much conflict and controversy might be mitigated if we, on the front end, when we're building these organizations, really took seriously not just a code of conduct, but like ethically, like what are revolutionary ethics, right? Because we all have our principles of unity. But I don't think that we necessarily spend enough time thinking about sort of the things that might seem more intangible, but that actually are part and parcel of the day-to-day work of like building movement.
You know, that's interesting. I think sometimes trying to have conversations around like policy, whenever one say policy, we like immediately think about like electoral politics, but the day-to-day thing, like how to get to that thing, is what I guess what I struggle with, or I feel people struggle with, like implementing. Like this is our policy, this is our ethics, this is the thing, the behavior that we're going to do, or the action that we're going to do that achieve a thing. So I'm curious, even as you talk about like the unity, there's this quote that says it's easier to act your way to new forms of thinking than to think your way into new forms of action. And I wonder, when you think about, like, as you said, and George Jackson said, settling your quarrels, how do you see mutual comradeship talking about or explaining this idea of taking the things that you're unified around, doing the work, and then as time progresses and relationships deepen, like some of those other contradictions or conflicts could also be reside at some kind of point, but really sticking to your principles and unity and doing the work together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's really important, but like I also do think that I think that doing the work is primary, right? But I think that the reason why oftentimes you don't necessarily have that much longevity, right? So for example, I am a movement dropout a little bit. I'm just now getting back into things, like, right? And so I think that and I think that is very typical, because of the culture of our organizations, right? Because of the ways that, you know, if somebody kind of goes missing, we don't necessarily follow up, right? If we have some sort of interpersonal conflict, it's just much like the fight or flight aspect of it is just much easier to contend with than actually working, making these interpersonal conflicts the responsibility of the organization, not in a gossipy or like a nosy way, but in a way that like everybody matters here. Like we need all hands on deck. Everybody that's in these organizations matter. And so I think that when we incorporate the ethical aspects into movement, that's when we might be able to kind of sustain a more like a longer, we might be able to sustain these organizations and the movement longer, because, and I'm like thinking as I'm going, because I don't want to say it's not happening, and it's not like as if I think that everybody is sort of raggedy and terrible in movement, but in different organizations and collectives that I've been in, I just do know that a lot of us are committed to a better world, and but that doesn't always translate into treating each other better. And so who wants to be in any collective where you're constantly feeling sort of alienated or marginalized or disposable, right? And too often that's the sort of culture that we develop in our organizations, I think.
Yeah, I think a part that stood out in your article was when you were speaking about like, doing, more than protests and, and I think it kind of, for me, it kind of just made me think about like how we always hear this thing about like everybody has their role in the movement or whatever. And then even you hearing you say you're like a movement, dropout and whatnot, and I think, I'm an artist, you're an academic, and I'm always thinking like I wonder if we have kind of like a similar struggle where like because sometimes, it may take a lot of time to write a book and, figure out a class to teach. And the same with me, it takes a lot of time, energy to create art, put up work, even though I keep my stuff movement oriented. I'm always feeling like, I know that this role as an artist isn't the movement itself. So I guess I'm just wondering if you can speak to, as an academic, because so much is constantly happening, and I do wonder if, yeah, just as far as finding that comfort as your role in the movement in the specific time, because sometimes as an artist I get a little stuck when I'm like, right now I'm doing everything I can for this show and people are setting shit on fire like downtown. I feel like, well, goddamn, well, what am I really doing? you know
Mm-hmm.
so I do just wonder like if that comes up for academics as well, as far as like that steady comfort in your role and time and understanding when it's time to put down the book writing and fight, like I can do that, but right now I'm focused on this one thing that is going to help in some level of, as far as the overall movement, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have like your contributions and then you have like your responsibilities. So I think that one of the difficult things, especially for academics, and why I think about ethics a lot is like, how do you show up into spaces outside of academia? Because academia has its own culture and it's a very expert, top down type of culture. And so that to me is a lot of the way that a lot of academics approach movement and organization is to show up as an expert. And that's not how you show up in movement. That is not to say that you don't use the skills that you have to offer. So like grant writing, for example, if organizations need grants or, political education, et cetera, et cetera. So that's important to use your skills. But in terms of how we show up, it's like you have to show up as equals, right? And oftentimes like, if this is your first time organizing, like for example, for me, 2020 was my first time getting into organizing in a sustained way. And so I have to show up with a particular level of humility and understanding, right? And willingness to learn from all sorts of people. And so to me, I think that the contribution that academics make is often around like writing or different types of like knowledge production. I think that's really important because we also can't cede ground to academia as the intellectual arm of the state, right? We at least have to like wage struggle there. And part of doing that is like telling the truth about things. And our medium is writing and teaching and that type of thing. But our responsibility is to not get entrapped in like the ivory tower, the ebony tower, whatever you want to call it, and to do shit, right? I think that one of the difficult parts, and especially for me, that sort of put me at an impasse. It's like, okay, how can I best contribute what my skills are at the same time that I need to be willing to learn new skills and do things. So for example, like I don't like protesting. It's just not my bag. But like in 2021, we were doing a lot of protesting, like Black Alliance for Peace was doing a lot of protesting around Haiti. And so I pushed myself to like, we have to organize these protests, right? Like I have to do things that aren't necessarily what I would consider in my wheelhouse or my primary contributions, but these are things that are necessary because we need all these hands on deck. So I think that it's an ongoing conversation about, so you're an artist, for example, like how, on the one hand, it's sort of like, how do I do my profession or my skill, my hobby, whatever, in a way that is like not an impediment to movement? But then also, like, how am I always thinking about how though I can translate those skills or apply those skills to organizing, or like outside of like the industry or the, whatever the industry that I'm in. But it's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing thing. And I think that there's contributions that for artists to make, for academics to make, for, organizer, everybody to make in movement, because like, things are not going well, and I think as long as, even for like, petty bourgeois professions like academia, as long as like we're taking seriously, like I don't want to be an enemy to movement. Even if I never went to another event again or another protest, like I don't want to be an enemy to movement. I don't want to be an impediment to movement. And so how am I making sure that the things that I do are to the benefit of movement, even if I never joined an organization again?
So I have one more question. I agree with your premise around ethics, and actually you should write a whole book around that if you haven't thought about it. And my question is in relationship to ideology. How does that fit within ethics? And we think all ideology is equal, like, because you're revolutionary doesn't make you a nationalist, because you're a nationalist doesn't make you a revolutionary, as a feminist doesn't make you a revolutionary. And so where does ethics plays in our struggle within ourselves along with our ideology?
Well, I think that ideology shapes ethics. So, for example, individualism is an ethic of capitalism, right? And of liberalism. Competition is an ethic of capitalism and liberalism. So-called meritocracy is an ethical, right? That's a particular ethical claim that the people who are the best should rule. I don't necessarily even believe, I don't even believe in meritocracy, but I also believe that whatever claim US has to meritocracy is incorrect. And so to me, ideology is what drives how you even conceive of ethics, right? How do you conceive of your morals, your values, and your principles? So I believe in, for example, like redistribution, for example, right? And that ethic emanates from a socialist ideology. I believe in race-based organizing, I suppose you could say. It's not as if I think, I don't believe in whatever racial animus, but I do believe I'm in an all-Black organization for a reason. That's an ethical commitment. Like I have an ethical commitment to Black people and to prioritizing the needs and struggles of Black people because of a sort of revolutionary nationalist ideology. And so to me, ideology is the starting point of figuring out what your ethics, epistemology, and politics are. It's sort of how is, again, like I say, like it's this kind of so what, like why are you even doing this? And if you're not clear on that, then it can be very, very difficult to sort of stake out like how you want to move in the world. Yeah, I don't think I have it backwards. I think your ideology, to me, your ideology informs your ethics, because ethics are, there's no, what would a non-ideological ethic be? You know what I'm saying? Like, even if you think something is universal, universalism is an ideology. That's a particular belief, right? That something can or does apply to everybody.
Well, I think we might have an epistemological conflict, and I don't know if I'm just assuming because the name is spiritual in it, and so maybe that might be somewhere. But go ahead, Yusef. I got one more question after that.
So going back to your earlier point when you said no Palestine ever called me nigger, right? And by how many times they ever may call me that, I will always believe in Palestine liberation. So is that an ideology commitment or is that an ethnic commitment? to that principle?
I think that's an ethical commitment.
Okay.
I think my ethical commitment is that irrespective of how individuals treat me, I will never support or cheer on their oppression. My ideological commitment is that as an anti-imperialist, I believe that every group deserves self-determination. So they're not, and they're very much entwined. Even ethics, epistemology, and politics, these things are like entwined. It's really hard to pull them apart. And so even this idea of like what came first. So, somebody saying like your ideology comes for your morals, whatever. Like, I mean, I don't have a dog in that fight. If that's like, I'm not here. This is not about semantics. And this is not about me trying to demonstrate mastery. Simply what I'm explaining is a way that I am trying to think, like drawing on the history of Black radical folks in a period of intense repression. I am just trying to think about, like, how do we relate to one another? How do we justify our belief about the world? And what do we do? That's ethics, epistemology, and politics, right? And how does all of this relate to what our responsibility and our historical task is? And so, like, I don't have a dog in this fight. So if y'all want to say I have it backwards, okay, whatever. But let's be thinking about ethics and ideology, whatever order you want to do it in. Like, I don't care.
So I think your position in stating is profound. That obviously I think it's a remake of Kwame Ture, right? We say no, Vietnam has ever called me nigger. But the principle of the ethics there, right? It challenged the ideology, because the ideology where it could be, where some like nationalists can be so narrow, because they're not wrestling with themselves to struggle around, or like you said earlier, where people like, well, the such and such ain't in our struggle, but it's, and also you contextualize how much reading, how much struggling that we're actually doing, and not being complacent. I think, again, that's where the ethics of how committed we are to this, to push us, that also pushes our ideology to change, to continue to shape us to be the best revolutionaries, or how we identify ourselves. So thank you for that.
I don't know any Black nationalist ideology that is for the oppression of other groups. There might be people who have that belief. That's a whole
nother show.
That banner. Right. And so, and this is the thing, like, there's a lot of things that we call ourselves, and we can do all sorts of things under that banner. Right. And I'm not, like I said, I'm sympathetic to like Black nationalism in general, but to me, I think Black nationalism is about ensuring the self-determination and empowerment of Black people wherever we're located, and political, economic, and social autonomy. But that is not predicated on the oppression of other groups, nor the celebration of other groups, because part of it is like, to the extent that there are other oppressed groups, like, Black people are always going to be on the chopping block. So for me, it seems to me that any sort of Black transformative politic may not prioritize the struggles of other groups, but certainly don't celebrate the demise of others. And this is not to say that there's not intra or interracial conflict. Of course there is, right? Of course there is. And if, I understand people who might enter into, like, for example, like an Arab gas station and feel a type of way when they're habitually treated badly by a particular group. I think, again, the ethical part comes into confronting those individual experiences without then having animus or wishing harm to a whole group because of an individual experience, right? Or even if it's a broader phenomenon. And so, to me, that's an ethical priority, right, over and above like an ideological one. And so, yeah, like somebody said, I refuse to let white supremacy strip me of my humanity. Exactly.
So listen, y'all watching Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win, episode 21. We're here with Dr. CBS, and we're wrapping up, but I got one more question. I have this fantasy of making this some type of grading thing to where revolutionaries or people who contribute, and we kind of grade their contributions. So for instance, if y'all know who Bobby Hemmett or whatever it is, a lot of people in the conscious community study Bobby Hemmett and is like, I don't think he produced anything worthwhile. But and then I'm saying this because I have a comrade or friend who wrote a book and produced something about, they had an argument and W.E.B. Du Bois was centering the argument, but they stopped following W.E.B. Du Bois after the 50s. Then I have another comrade who also wrote a book, and they don't like that, but they won't have conversations or whatever. I'm saying all that to say, you mentioned something about protecting legacies. Like, could you kind of share the point when you think of mutual comradeship, like protecting the legacies of people who contribute obviously to the Black radical tradition or traditions of Blackness?
Yeah. Legacy maintenance is really important. And again, like this is like coming from the people that I study. So, and I will say, a part of what I write about is that like it's generally women who are, or non-men who are at the helm of legacy maintenance. And this has a number of factors. So for example, when I think about like Shirley Graham Du Bois and all that she did for like W.B. Du Bois, or like Dorothy Hunton and writing a biography of her husband, oftentimes this can be like that the women outlive the men. But it also, I think that there's just also something about I don't want to attribute any sort of whatever metaphysical things to this, but in the people that I study, it is mostly women who do this type of legacy maintenance. But I will say, so one of the ways I talk about like legacy maintenance in my book is in the petition We Charge Genocide. Part of what they did was cite two previous petitions that had been filed before the United Nations, because both of those petitions were buried by the U.S. delegation. So they didn't necessarily get like the reach and the audience that they deserved. And so part of what We Charge Genocide did was take up those arguments, that meticulous research, that defense of Black life that was inaugurated in those two petitions. And they cited those petitions, and they even worked with some of the people who worked on those earlier petitions, because they understood that this codification of Black rights as human rights was important. And so they could have completely ignored that and did their own thing. Like the Civil Rights Congress could have completely ignored those previous two petitions, one from the NAACP, one from the National Negro Congress. But what they did was lift this up, like, these things already happened, right? So these petitions were already filed, and these matter to us. Like, not only did some of our best and brightest thinkers put their mind to this, but like this matters to understanding like what's happening to Black people. And so that's just one example of legacy maintenance, but it's important because of the way that the state will distort, erase, obscure, and malign our people, especially if they're Black radicals. And so it's important for us to tell the truth about these people, but also, to the extent that we're going to have monuments and holidays and this type of thing, it's up to us to create that. So it's up to us to sort of lift up the legacy of like a George Jackson, for example. It's up to us to celebrate Black August. Like, that's all about legacy maintenance. It's up to us to continue to push back in Black History Month against the sort of handkerchief head firsts, the way that they try to do that, and really emphasize like African liberation. And so to me, legacy maintenance is important because people will always tell lies about us, like us being Black people, us being Black radical people. And so the more that we know, the more that we care, and the more that we like lift up and think alongside these broader legacies, I think the better off our current movements will be. So
love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for stopping in. I know you said you got something coming up, but anything you or BAP got coming up that you want to mention before you bounce?
The Black Alliance for Peace, we are relaunching our research and archive team. I will be the co-coordinator of that. So, looking forward to, getting back into consistent organizing with BAP. There's all kinds of things going on, but all I just want to say is like, pay attention to what's happening in LA, get involved in things that are happening in your city, get involved in this struggle against ICE, because, immigration is a Black issue. right? Every
Mhm.
issue is a Black issue in some capacity. Like we have this there seems to be some misconception that only undocumented Latinx folks are being there's only undocumented Latinx folks, and even that were the case, we would still care. But a lot of them, first of all, a lot of them Latinx people are Black, and secondly, there's Haitians and all kinds of other groups, and so to me, it's really important that we get involved in the struggles that are happening currently, and the ICE one is sort of a big one. So,
Absolutely. Dr. CBS, thank you so much. Y'all stay tuned as we transition to our comrades from the KC chapter. So we'll see you soon, and peace.
I'm throwing copper at the coppers, but I'm shaking like Morocco. Say my prayers with the pistol, serve the sinners with the chopper. All my buddies got it from scratch. My house had Betty Crocker. His mama owned D. He ain't even get no shot up. Profit is invisible. Profit come from product. He think it buffet. He can't comprehend no potluck. God bless the child with his own powder to rock.
What's up? What's up? We got our comrade from KC, Mackenzie. How are you doing today? Let us know what's happening in KC. What's the latest as far as CMB organizing there?
Okay, so let me know if there's audio issues. It's a lot of hair and I have my AirPod. Okay. So
I can hear you, yeah.
okay, perfect. So like I said, I'm Mackenzie, I'm the chapter lead for CMBKC. So I'm just gonna give like a little rundown of what we did throughout May and what we've done this past first week of June. So May 2nd, we had the Cosmic Slop event. It was with Kansas City Culture Building. They're an organization here that they're an art-based organization that curates an experience that's grounded in liberation. They do things from poetry to music to physical art. We set up a table there while they were doing their art thing. A couple of other organizations were there. We were giving out, you know, pamphlets, the CMB pamphlets that has the 10 points. We handed out some condoms, we handed out some COVID tests and stuff like that. The next day, we had Mutual Aid Day. That's a event hosted by KC Mutual Aid. And sorry, my cat. It gathers a large group of organizers and small businesses all in leftist spaces here in the city. It was at Goofball Skateboards. All the orgs basically set up a table. They give away things ranging from zines to Narcan to selling muffins. They also have PowerPoints that different organizations set up to inform everybody about what they do, so that we all help foster organization between leftist orgs here. We gave away some COVID tests. We gave away Film the Police t-shirts, fentanyl test strips, and a whole slew of other things. The same day, actually at the same time, we had our second Give Back Kickback. It was at the Kansas City Public Library, Lucille H. Bluford branch. That's in the urban core of the city. We always host our kickbacks there, both because that's the area that needs it the most, and that's an area that other orgs tend to kind of ignore, um, despite the fact that that's the place that they need all of these things the most. So we gave away fresh produce, diapers in collaboration with Happy Bottoms. We also had a Happy Bottoms representative there that helped parents sign up for their free diaper program that they do every month. We had hygiene kits, clothes, a whole bunch of clothes, Narcan, COVID tests, masks, condoms, test strips, emergency contraceptive. And we also provided the people that came with a free hot meal. On the 15th of May, us, CNBKC, the Kansas City chapter of NBUF, the National Black United Front, and Kansas City Defender. We got a resolution from the Kansas City City Council made in our name to recognize um, May 19th as Malcolm X Day in Kansas City as a kickoff to our Malcolm X Centennial Celebration Weekend. So May 17th, that was that Saturday, we had a community wellness day at Luce Park. We discussed and practiced herb wellness, guided movement, and had an art therapy session. Um, May 18th, the Malcolm X Centennial event at the Kansas City Bluford Library branch. We had a panel. It was a collaborative panel with folks from Kansas City Defender, MBUF, and CMB. It discussed topics about Malcolm X that connected his story and his politics to modern day, especially people around our age, in a way that we don't really learn in school or from many contemporary accounts of his life and contemporary accounts of his beliefs. So the topics range from the influence his religion had on his politics to how important his wife was to the movement. Comrade Shabazz, who is CMBKC co-lead, um, talked about the role of internationalism, what it means to be an internationalist today during the current Black liberation movement, especially when it comes to, the genocides in Congo, Sudan, and Gaza. It was a full house. It was very packed. Unfortunately, we had to turn some people away because capacity and fire hazards. And then on the actual day of Malcolm X's 100th birthday, we had a showing of the Malcolm X movie with Denzel. Again, this was a collaborative showing between those three organizations. And it was held at the Kansas City Public Library, but not at the Blueford branch. It was at another location.
So
So
Mackenzie, real
last
quick,
Sunday,
I'm sorry, I got a quick. I wanted to show the picture of you and Shabazz, Comrade Shabazz. That was the document you was talking about, right?
yeah, that's the
Yeah.
resolution.
So I got a quick question though. So I hear a lot of the work, and I appreciate you sharing it. And so in Atlanta, and I think in other places, we all have programs, and we are trying to turn those programs into actual mutual aid, and not feel like it's just charity work. So I'm curious if y'all have conversations around like building out mutual aid programs and making sure it's not charity. Like what type of conversations y'all have around that, or maybe even share your thoughts on the work of mutual aid versus or stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, we've had a couple of conversations about making sure that it's not like making sure that these are things that are because with charity people get burnt out. A lot of things like this people really really get burnt out, and we are trying to get the people and the time to make these things constant, and like yeah, like you said, like start programs. Since we just started, we have a lot to learn when it comes to that, and that's kind of what we're focusing on how to actually get these things off the ground and kind of make sure that it's not falling into like savior complexes and things like that. Like it's it's really difficult, especially since we haven't been a thing for a year yet, but we are trying to work through that process and learn more, especially from different CMB chapters and how they're trying to run things, in order to make what we do a lot better.
No, no, I appreciate that answer. I mean, I asked that because I think that's a continuous conversation, and even I want to even ask Brother Yusef to maybe kind of shed some thoughts how he see that, and even if he have a question, but like 4 chapters, Yusef, what would you encourage new chapters to do as it relates to making sure that their work is actually capacity building, actually power building, mutual aid work instead of charity work? We know that you've done great work in Mama Cool House in that community. So yeah, share a little bit perspective.
I'm not an expert on this per se, so I'll share. Sorry. I think there's a thin line between charity work and mutual aid work, and sometimes we can get confused in that. I think going back to our previous guest that we just had, it's our ideology that governs along with our ethics, and we have to keep going back to the drawing board of relooking at that. Actually, Comrade Quasi here in Detroit, he always remind me of, and us in general, that to make sure that the work that we're doing is not the new welfare system, the social welfare system, so to speak. So, are we having surveys? Are we taking people contacts? Are we following up with people to engage them, where we're not just doing handouts? So those, and some days we may not do that because not every comrade may show up, right? You only work with so little. And then I think the biggest thing, how are we coming back and regrouping to examine what did we do, what was good, what was bad, how can we make it different. Also asking people to donate, even if it's a penny, a quarter, right? People are contributing, and then they that the next thing that we do, like that dollar, that quarter went to buy those Pampers. So you're contributing to your own liberation, and those are all sciences that we have to work out through our continued examination of what we do. And also, what I've been on a big kick today recently is just there's our political consciousness and then there's our political reality, and we have to find the medium ground between those two. But it's part of the struggle that we have to engage in political education and just on an everyday basis.
Um, yeah, I had a question. I was just curious because I know you said you did the film showing, and I know when we're often, critiquing different films when it comes to, like, Black liberation media, and even when we do our political education. So I'm just curious, like, when you showed the film, were you able to also have some sort of conversation around things that the film got right, things that the film got wrong, and just overall, like, elaborating more on the radical politics of Malcolm X? Or is that something that you plan to do in the future, as far as showing movies to reel people in, but also incorporating it with conversation to evolve people's political analysis, especially media analysis, when it comes to film and television?
So I wasn't at the film screening. I had that was at the um like I said, I was at the library, but I wasn't able to come. I was busy that day. So I'm not entirely sure, since NBuff was kind of the ones that got that space and picked that film, where what exactly they discussed. Obviously there was a discussion. I would hope that they would tie it back to what we were talking about the day before, since that was about kind of emphasizing the radicalness of him and getting, like, what he actually believed into the consciousness of people that may not know too much about him. I think that that would make sense. I think that if we as an organization solely, or if we collaborate with other organizations to do screenings in the future, that we would try to have those critiques and try to have those discussions. Um, but like I said, I'm not entirely sure because I wasn't there. But it would make sense since, like I said, the panel was specifically about disproving things that the public may get wrong about Malcolm, or focusing in on things that people may not know about him.
Listen, Mackenzie, thank you for coming through. Anything that y'all have coming up that you want to let people know who are close to Kansas City or in Kansas City that they can be involved with, or even how people can support online?
Yeah, so we are going to be having a book club where we kind of read different radical books and try to critique it, or try to apply it to the struggles that we're currently facing, not just necessarily in the modern day, but here specifically in Kansas City. We Here in Kansas City, we actually have a couple of things that are really big, that passed through city council, or are currently sitting in city council. We've had issues with transportation. We've had the free public transportation for a couple years now. They're trying to walk that back. And if they don't walk back, their plan is, if they don't walk back free bus fare, they're going to cut basically like half of their funding, less than half. They'll get less than half this year than they did the last fiscal years. Obviously, we know who is mostly affected by public transportation. We have several members in our chapter that rely solely on public transportation. So that's a fight that we're really trying to get kind of a national like eye on. Um, and we are also um, trying to fight against several jails that are trying to be built here. They're trying to build a new city jail for city ordinances that's different from the county jail that we already have. And also, City Council just recently, a couple weeks ago, approved a new temporary jail in order to house people. So that's 3 jails. And like it's 3 jails.
Crazy.
It's a lot. So we're trying to organize about that, and that kind of ties into our issue with local control. They were trying to like frame it so that KCPD can get statistics on what people are being arrested for and things like that, and they're not obligated to do that. They're not obligated to do that at all because they're not run by us. So it's a lot of issues regarding the police and kind of the prison issues, jail issues here in the city.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that with us. I didn't even know stuff like that was happening in KC. Yeah, it was dope to really hear about what you guys are building out there. Thank you so much, Mackenzie. We're gonna wrap up now. But yeah, thanks for having. Do you have anything else that you want to give a shout out to as far as what you guys have coming up?
No, that's kind of mostly what we're focusing on, these fights that we're in coalition with or other organizations here with. But thank you guys a lot for having me on the show. I
All right.
really appreciated it. Very insightful questions that I'm going to take back to the base.
Yeah. Come back anytime. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
All right. Peace. All right, fellas and fellettes. Can you say fellettes?
I was wondering what was next gonna come after that. So you come up.
It's fellet. It's like fillet. Fillets.
Wow.
Yeah. How y'all flowing? So we obviously know that our great beloved, beautiful brother over there with the what you call that the Potter Bear. We know he didn't make it on the podcast roster. So he back here with us rejects. But yeah, so we have Yusef traveling. We got Dr. CBS coming through, and then the KC. How y'all reflecting on this episode?
Yeah, I think it's always dope to hear about the stuff that Yusuf is doing, and it was cool to hear about yeah, just the questions that you came back with, because I think that's the whole point of of being out of your regular everyday comfort zone and traveling, whether it be with groups, organizations, or whatever, is that you always want to come back with some sort of reflections or questions. You got me thinking about the Black radical tradition for sure, and how I define it, how it's been previously defined, and what other people may define it as, and where all that connects. So it's definitely insightful to hear about those things. Then CBS was great, as expected. Definitely connected. It's funny because we had an interesting discussion in my family chat today. An aunt of mine shared something that was kind of, a little propagandish, and my cousin, who's a black, I guess I describe him as a black leftist. We're like the two, I guess, baby radicals of the family, maybe, and he didn't, hold back with, kind of opening the conversation to what is real, and kind of checking in a very in love and respectful way, and I was able to kind of co-sign. It made even the family a little bit uncomfortable having that conversation. So we were like, well, should we just get this out of the chat? And I'm just kind of like, no, we gotta have it, we gotta have the conversation here. So I ended up sharing this link to be like, this is somebody that knows a little bit more about these things as well. So maybe hopefully my family was able to get something from it if they're watching a playback or something. But yeah, this is great. And it's always dope to hear about what's happened in other cities like KC. So yeah.
Hey, definitely had a shout out from one of your cousins in the chat.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
Okay, dope. I didn't even see that.
No, I think too. I think it's dope to again, been knowing Yusuf for quite some time, and as smart and powerful as his brother is, he stays inquisitive and asking questions, and you can tell it's a forever student. So I think it's always dope, as you said, to come back with questions or different questions. With Dr. CBS, I've been following that of mutual comradeship for a while, and I've been seeing the development, and I think it's just gravely important, especially in these times, as we say, shit falling apart. I just think social relations and doing things together or not, resolving conflict. It's just a testy situation. And she was saying something at a point of like how a lot of the times we are reluctant or against going through processes when conflicts arise. Like going through a process means you have to be accountable to a people, and people evade process seems to not have accountability to anybody but themselves. But yeah, then I shout out to the KC chapter. Shabazz is doing some things, and the team. Mackenzie, thank you for coming through. Soon, I do try to facilitate a panel about tenant organizing and KC tenant organizing, and some comrades from DC going to come on and try to do a panel. And so we'll be pulling on the comrades from DC. But Yusef, what you got?
I think like Cherie was talking. She's been talking about it for a minute. Her is it One Woman Show?
Yes.
You know that, and just in the bill section, you know, being in New York, getting ready. There's a countdown. You know, she's like, man, I ain't my best, but hey, I'm in it. You know, it's just giving us a impression of that process. But and I'm relating to, again, going back to what I keep saying, there's our political conscience and our political reality, right? And part of there's aspirations, and some of us are artists, some of us are writers, or whatever. And like, how do you do that without feeling like you're being less than yourself, and within where it's compromising, or you may feel it's compromising to your beliefs or your ideology? Because at the end of the day, we still live in this world. We still get up every day. We go buy gas. We go to the grocery store. And what my point is saying is, like, where do you find that medium ground to explore those things without feeling like you're compromising? Even we talked about the influence of dropping the knowledge that she has in those things, and sometimes it may not fit. You know, for myself, I've been wanting to do a one-man play around my father for quite some time. You know, finally had the courage. My trainer I work with, he's an actor. You know, asking him, hey, what do you think about doing this with me? And stuff. And so it's different avenues to still get to the same destination. So I salute you for that courage of taking those steps and being in that part while managing everything else. I think the conversation with Dr. CBS, it took a left a little bit, but it was a good left around the ethics and shit. Like, I didn't even think that was going to come out of the conversation. But in terms of so when she talked about how the lack of ethics contribute to the downfall organization, like that, my ears just like stood up and shit. And because of where we at, and I don't think splits are bad. They happen, but I think some of them can be prevented. But I think more importantly, the question of what are the ethics within our organization, like she said, like it's more than just code of ethics and per se. And I think it's a deeper conversation. I think the comrades, like, we use that word very loosely, and what have we done to earn it? There's some pieces that came out of the Video Watu. It's a New African Theoretical Journals where they wrote about Conrad. Geechee, you kind of alluded to, and we talked about in the past, like policy. That there's a piece. There's a book 12. I don't know if you read it, Geechee. I think you would love it. I'm gonna send it to you, and it goes through policy, the reason for policy, the reason for cadre development, what it means to keep politics in command. Things of that nature. And so it was one of the best pieces I ever read. I keep that motherfucker next to my bed like the Bible.
Oh yeah, send that. I do. Both of y'all just made me, but I do want to say the veggie back. Cherie, I think that was a pretty profound question. I think you could do something with that question if you clip or whatever you do with that clip, your question and Cherie's answer, Charisse's answer. And maybe it could be played for something, but maybe it can have some type of relationship with your solo show, because, you know, over the year, I guess, it's developing, and I think you're coming into yourself, and then you're also finding your place in space and still being a creative. So I think that question was timely. The answer was dope. And then, as Yusef say, there's courage to do your solo in the fashion that you're doing it. I think there's something. I'm not a creative, so I don't know what the fuck to do with it, but I just know.
Yeah, no, I think I can use it because, like, I mean, you know, with it being a festival and me having such a limited amount of time to really advertise for it, I've been trying to find creative ways to talk about this online. So it's like the last post I made, I shared some clips from the interview with Steph, but then also talked about the show. So I think I can probably do something creative with the clips from the interview with CBS and stuff, because yeah, that is something that I'm constantly thinking about. And quick shout out to my mom in the chat. I just want to say shout out to my mommy, Debbie Murray, and then shout
Yeah.
out to Attila as well. I did see I did go back and see your cause that's my cousin who was also in the family chat. So I'm glad that some people are able to kind of tap in. But yeah, definitely it is an interesting place because I think even now that I'm here and going to the theater yesterday and then just kind of thinking about like my audience and all these things that I just wasn't thinking about before beforehand. I was like, well, I'm really about to say some stuff that really can ruffle. So like it's one thing when you're online or on social media and you're posting stuff that you know people probably roll their eyes at and just keep scrolling or whatever. It's another thing when you're like you about to say all this stuff where like half the audience may be like, what the hell? You know, yeah, it's definitely an interesting place to be, but you know, I'm excited to do it. And I think even now, you know, with this being a festival and I'm not actually producing it, it has, you know, felt a little weird because, you know, I got to kind of sell tickets and this, that, and the third. And it's, you know, these other elements of it. When I produce it, I really want it to be more of a pay what you can sort of a thing. But you know, because I'm in a under somebody else's production, I kind of have my limitations. But as I'm preparing this version of the show, I'm thinking, you know, more about when we put it up in Atlanta and how definitely I want all the orgs involved and stuff and to really make it like a community effort. So yeah, for sure. And then yeah, definitely the conversation with CBS grounded me a lot because I've been just thinking the whole time like, man, I need to forget about this. I need to go back to Atlanta and like get more serious about like, you know, challenging the state. Like I don't know. But I think, you know, like her question kind of just grounded me a little bit more. It's like just breathe, like you're in the space, the worst's gonna happen, and you know, and that's just kind of the evolution of it all. But definitely, that is the constant battle. Or just like, you know, what am I doing over here trying to learn this poem and like, you know, people dying and stuff. You just feel silly, but definitely, I'm happy to be in a position and to be reflecting the things that I learn in community to the out the outer world.
But you brought me back to something that Dr. CBS said is like in our core, if we are who we are, then we won't run too far from that. It's kind of like a parent teaching a child. At some point, the child has to grow up to be, and you have to have the faith in them that what you share it was going to manifest itself. But also, there's what you're saying, and I agree that we have to also. And you didn't say it this way, but it made me think about when I was in the car. We can't just always live the struggle all day, every day, because in reality the struggle is there. But how do we, like when I was in the car, I went to the Atlantic Ocean. I walked and put my foot in there. Like I really like I done other I one day when my driver, he's like, I will wait on you. I will wait on you. Like I may be here 2 hours. And as soon as I came, he was out there waiting on me, right? And he became my driver throughout. Like I built a relationship with this. Like that's struggle without me in struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And these are things that because we think struggle always has to be intense or against the state. And it's every win is against the state, the ability to build a relationship with that person. The ability
Yeah.
to and he didn't speak English that well.
Mm-hmm.
So but I felt the love and things. So I say that to say like it's who we are is always going to show up. But we just can't overthink who we are because again, our political consciousness is always in conflict with our political reality. But we're trying to find that how to be human without compromising ourselves.
So I want to take the time to shout out my driver in when he's from Honduras, but in Nicaragua, anytime I touch down, he like, yo, don't call nobody but me. I'm coming to get you.
Right.
And so shout out to them drivers out there. Now I want to say, fuck the drivers too. The Guatemalan driver who got my fucking iPad lost and took it to the police station, and the motherfucker still got my iPad. So the driver in Guatemala. No, I'm joking. But yeah, what y'all got going on this weekend? The rest of the week, man. What y'all laying out? I know what you got going on, Cherie, but Y'all want to
Well,
share?
I do got some interesting stuff that beside the show because I'm staying with my best friend who's also an artist. We've been best friends since we were 15. So she's a great singer. She's
We don't
really
believe you. Tell her come sing right now.
alternative. She probably sleep right now. I should have her come on
Nah,
for
nah.
real, but no, but she's gonna be doing a concert like in her apartment. You know, like people are so. I love the way people think in New York. That's why it's just like only in New York. So she's gonna be doing a concert on Sunday, and since I'm staying with her, I'm gonna definitely be in attendance. So I'm gonna get to see that. But it's just been great for us to be able to. She saw the first solo show and had to come in and do lights last minute at one point during that run. So she'll be able to see how it's evolved, and hopefully, I can inspire her creatively, politically, all of those things as well. So it's been a dope experience. So yeah, that's what I got going on this weekend.
Man, I'm just gonna relax and I think y'all know I've been writing in my book, so I wrote four chapters, going back and tweaking that and things, and just chilling for the weekend, good bro. There's a lot to think about in terms of where we at, and how do we get better? I mean, I ain't getting younger. You can tell by the white on my face, right? So I think that's one of the things I struggle with right now is because we all, like, when you make that commitment, take that oath of the struggle, like, to what end? What is the measurements, right? I believe there's some merits there, but you just want to make sure you just ain't just doing this, just be doing this.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing with me. I'm gonna be taking a little rest. Last week was a lot, man. It was just a lot going on. Then we had like a Atlanta citywide alliance get together at the farm.
Yeah, that was dope. Great
yeah.
job with that. Geechee put that out there. And
no, that ain't me. That's all. Layla from BAT.
Okay, because y'all, I feel like that it was such a quick turnaround. Because 1 second I look at the chat and I saw you message, be like, "Oh, y'all gonna come to the fight?" I'm like, "Wait, when did this happen?" But I'm glad I was able to make it. But great job to everybody. Shout out to all the orgs that were there in attendance, and I feel like that was a dope turnaround. And Layla at the farm and all that was just amazing.
Yeah, that was Layla. Shout out to Layla.
Yeah.
And thank you. I was not late. I was doing work, and I had to come after work. Ma'am,
I was later than Geechee, so I
wasn't late though. I told y'all I had something else to do. I had a community meeting.
shout out to Carmen too.
Yeah, Carmen be hating. Shout out to the education committee of the Pittsburgh Neighborhood Association. We had our first meeting today, and we moving forward on with. Shout out to those people, and shout out to y'all in the chat. So make sure y'all keep commenting in the comments when the video is done. But until then, we're gonna have to see y'all next week, man. Shit over, bro.
Oh yeah, I won't be here next week, guys, because it's opening night for me. So
anybody care about that shit, girl? This is it. This is important. You can go there late. You on mute, Yusef. You can go there late, man. Fuck all that.
Hey, just be mindful not to post any pictures. So.
I know, right? He gonna use it and be like, she was booed off the stage. That's what happened. She thought that she had it going on at this show, but that's why she's back here with us.
The chat. Yeah, what this look like, bro? What this look like?
Do, right?
People in the comment section, does it not look like Yusef is trying to petition land? But listen, I was on Black Liberation Media. He like, nah, bro, we good, bro. We don't got no role for you.
Yeah, that's all gonna think is like, nope.
Now you gotta come back. Now you gotta come back with the low lives. It's over, bro. You had your shit. No,
I'll miss y'all next week, but get tickets if you're in the New York area. Come out. Like I said, if you come, anybody from BLM anywhere, say hi to me. I'll stay afterwards. Talk to anybody that I want to. This is a form of connection. So yeah, please try to make it.
Yeah, man. We out, and we gonna take y'all out too. In fact, the song that y'all hearing is a socialist song in Nicaragua. Actually, my driver gave it to me. He gave me a CD with a bunch of songs on it. So I just, shout out to them drivers one more time. But I'm gonna see y'all next week. Peace.
Peace.
Un hermoso pensamiento eterno el sufrimiento. Va el pueblo su voz alzando, que no nos siga matando. Del rico su daga hiriente, su voracidad creciente, no nos siga aniquilando. Compañero, escuche mis sentimientos y que viaje con el